All right. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming to our traffic council meeting for March 23rd. We'll begin with introductions. I'm David Kozis. I'm the traffic council chair. I work for the city's public works department. At the beginning of the meeting, I see Captain Doucette from the traffic bureau. I see Isaac Prezant, our traffic engineer from DPW. I see our citizen representative, Mitch Fishman. I see Jeremy Freudberg. He's our citizen alternate. And
Councilors Larry and Maliki.
so we have Councilor Maliki from, let's see, from which ward is that? That's, I should know this, Ward 3, right? Ward 3, and Councilor Larry from Ward 1. And do we have Councilor Downs? Are we expecting her today?
I don't know. I don't see her here yet.
Okay. All right. So we can begin with our first item of the evening. Okay. I'm just going to move this. Okay. So our first item of the evening, and I guess I should start by saying we have a lot of items to get through tonight. I want to be respectful for people's time, especially for items that might be near the end of our agenda. So I'm going to try and go quickly. And, if we have consensus on something, we can hopefully try and vote on it quickly and move on to the next item. All right. So our first item is TC 60-22. It's Isaac Prezant, City Transportation Engineer, requesting to add a no turn on red restriction facing Perkins Street northbound at the approach at Washington Street. So we're going to start with a quick presentation. We'll have comment and then hopefully get to a vote. So this item we actually heard 2 months ago at our January meeting. This is the location at Washington Street, at Perkins Street. We held this item at that meeting. Here's a view looking to the north from Perkins Street. Here's a view looking when you're traveling up Washington Street eastbound. You have Perkins Street on the right here at this signal. So the idea is to put in a no turn on red signal sign right here at this intersection because of sightline concerns. So we discussed this back in January. We held it because, even though there was definitely support for putting in the sign, we had some concerns about the functioning of the traffic signal, and we wanted to take some time to take a look at it more carefully, make sure that it's functioning as well as it can. We also had a discussion about, there was concerns that we heard from the public about motorists that are traveling eastbound and, they're continuing on Washington Street. They don't want to get onto the Pike. They want to travel further to the east, but sometimes people get confused here apparently and go to this side of the median, which is very dangerous. It's one way coming in the opposite direction. So we talked about that, and we think we'll be able to add some yellow paint right here to just make it even more clear. We already have signage, but to just make it more clear, you can't go to the left of the median. You need to stay to the right. So since the last meeting, we did take a look at the signal, and it seemed to be functioning. I don't know if Isaac has any other comments on this. We didn't, the times that I went there, it was functioning every time. Is there anything that you wanted to say at this point, Isaac?
Yeah, it was just right around the time of the last traffic council meeting that myself and our signal contractor were out there for probably the second or third time. It was difficult to diagnose any major issue, but we just did some cleanup work just as far as cleaning the detection camera that's there and revising some of the settings. And hopefully it's been better. It seems like the complaints that folks have directed towards me have stopped. But, by all means, if anyone has other or new observations, this is definitely an opportunity to speak up. But, that said, it's a traffic signal that's part of DPW's regular maintenance. So, any further concerns will absolutely be on DPW to address.
Okay, thank you, Isaac. So again, we held this at the last meeting. We took a look at it and now it's back. We are recommending to approve the item at this point. We're recommending to put in the no turn on red sign, Perkins Street northbound at Washington Street. We do have the language in front of us to be able to take that vote today. It would be TC 864. That's where we're beginning this evening. So I will, well, let's just first see if there's any public comment. If anyone from the public would like to comment on this item, just raise your hand and we can call on you. And maybe Isaac, you can sort of also help me see if anyone has their hands raised. I don't see any. Okay.
No, Steve Jaffe.
Okay, Steve Jaffe, if you could just remind us what your address is, please.
Yes, very quickly. Thank you. I'm at 39 Perkins Street. I'm just about a half a block to the south or up the hill from that intersection. And I may have been the person who raised this first because I think it's a deadly intersection with no sight lines of the traffic that's coming eastbound. You don't see them basically until they enter the intersection. So I'm very supportive of this. Obviously, I'm very grateful for what sounds like it's hopefully going to be a positive vote.
Thank you very much. Okay, so I'll go ahead and make the motion to approve this item. It would be TC 864 to approve the no turn on red. Any last comments before Danielle calls the roll? Okay, Danielle, can you call the roll, please?
Captain Doucette,
Aye.
Mr. Fishman,
Aye.
Mr. Kosis,
Aye.
Mr. Present.
Aye.
Okay, that's 4-0 approved.
Okay, so this was approved. We have a 20-day appeals period. If any, we don't expect anyone to appeal this vote, but we have to wait 20 days to see if it does get appealed through the clerk's office. If we do have an appeal, then this item will be heard by Public Safety and Transportation Committee of City Council. Otherwise, after April 12th, we would be able to install the new sign. Okay, so thank you for this. We're going to move on to our next item now.
Excuse me, David, Counselor Downs is joining right now. She'll be our
Oh, very
fifth
good.
member.
Perfect. Okay, and we are joined now by Counselor Downs from Ward 5.
Hi,
So our next-
everyone.
Hi, Counselor Downs. We finished our first item and now we're on our second item. This is TC 4-23. Captain Doucette, on behalf of the Newton Traffic Bureau, requesting a change to the parking regulations on Jackson Road between Pearl Street and the Watertown Town Line to address safety concerns stemming from vehicles parked on both sides of this section of Jackson Road. Okay, so I'm going to do the presentation. This will just take a couple minutes, then we'll be able to hear from the public and hopefully take a vote. This is the area that we're talking about on Jackson Road. This is the Lincoln Elliott School. Actually, we're really only talking about the section of Jackson Road between Capitol Street and up to the Watertown Town Line. Okay. Here is a view looking down toward Pearl Street. This is looking to the south, the Lincoln Elliott parking lot and schools on your left. You can see cars parked on both sides. It's 27 or 28 feet wide at this point. So it's pretty narrow for cars to park on both sides, especially when you have a bus that's going to be coming through here, the school bus. When you get to the south of Capitol Street, it widens out a little bit. It's 32 feet at that point. So that feels more comfortable to allow parking on both sides. So here we are. This is Jackson Road to the north of Capitol Street. You have the school on the right. You have the bus stop right here in this area. Do you guys see the cursor, Isaac? Moving? Yep. Okay, yep. So we have the bus right here, then the entrance to the parking lot, and then you start having parking on both sides. You can see it's already even more narrow because of the snow. And the bus needs to go through here the same time that you have cars coming from the opposite direction. So here's the sign that says no parking bus stop. Then a little bit further to the north, we have a sign here that says no parking 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. on school days. So you could park here. You have a lot of staff parking on both sides, but then right at this point, it becomes no parking on the school side, but you could still park on the residential side. A little bit further still is the end of the no parking 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. on school days sign. So then right after this sign, again, you can park on both sides of the street. Okay. So I think there's general agreement between Public Works and the police department that it really is too narrow to allow parking on both sides at the times that there's a lot of parking, which is during the school days when you have staff and parents and, you know, different vehicles parking there. And for safety, we are going to recommend restricting parking either on one side of the street or on the other side of the street during school hours. After school or on any day that's not a school day or weekends, there would be no restriction. So we're talking about what should the restriction be during school hours on which side of the street. So we have option 1 and option 2. Option 1 would be extending the existing no parking signs on the school side of the street, the east side, right? So sort of extending the no parking on school days, you know, on the entire school side of the street, not just along this short section, but the area before it and after. So that whole side would be no parking 8 to 4 on school days. Okay, that's option 1. That would mean that those vehicles would be probably parking on the residential side of the street instead. That's the downside, right? The good thing about it is that we have the utility poles that are there. You can see the utility poles are already there on that side. We can use them to post the signs. But the downside is that you would have more cars parked on the residential side instead, really close to these driveways. Probably there would be ticketing and appeals and all that because all these cars, everyone would have to park on the residential side, right? So that's option 1. Option 2 would be to allow parking on the west side. To allow parking on the school side of the street, right? So the whole school side of the street, we would allow parking and we would install signs on the residential side. There would be no parking 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. on the residential side. So the good thing about that would be that there's a lot more parking available on the school side. You're already on the school side of the street to let the kids out if they're being picked up or dropped off over there. There's no driveways on that side to so you can fit more cars there. And you wouldn't end up with cars parking so close to all the driveways. So those are some really good positives. The only negative thing is that we would now need to be posting signs on the residential side where we don't have the utility poles. So I think there's 1 or 2 signs already there, so we could use those poles, but we might need to add a few more poles on the residential side. So again, we have option 1, which we went through, which would prohibit parking on the east side of the street. There would be no change to the blue zone or the bus zone. And then we have option 2, which is exactly the same as option 1, except that the prohibition would be on the west side of the street, right? On the residential side of the street with no change to the blue zone or the bus zone. So those are our 2 options. I wanted to go to public comment now. I have a preference. I want to see what everyone else thinks, and then we could see what members of Traffic Council think. I see Councilor Leary, you have your hand up.
Yes, thank you, David. It makes sense for me to restrict parking on one side of the street to allow for better traffic flow. One thing I wanted to ask about was where the teachers usually park there, right? And we've had problems in the past, like when they were getting ticketed when they were moved over to Gardner Street, when there was less parking on the other end of Jackson Road. So, and I know we had talked also about some point doing a parking plan for the whole area, because in the future, we'll have a swing space there, the Lincoln Elliott School, and we already have the senior, the new senior living that people will be moving into shortly. So I wanted to know how this would kind of fit into the plan. And in terms of the side of the street, I think option one makes the most sense since we do have poles over that side. And the only problem there is sometimes I've had complaints from number 51 about it's a little bit difficult to back out of their driveway when cars are parked directly across. So that was the only downside to it. So I just have questions how this plan would fit in. If anyone has talked to the teachers or to the principal of Lincoln Elliott about this change, if there is any, if it will put additional pressure on a teacher parking.
Okay, so a couple thoughts. So not too long ago, we changed the parking regulations on Gardner Street, right? There used to be a time limit on all of Gardner Street, and so staff was not able to park anywhere on Gardner Street. Their lot is definitely too small, and for sure, they use Jackson Road up here to the north of their parking lot. They use Jackson Road to the south of Pearl Street, where all the construction workers have been parking for the past couple months.
Yeah, and that will end, so they'll be able to
That
park.
will end. That will end. They could use Gardner Street all the way down Gardner Street. The whole of Gardner Street, the whole north side is unrestricted parking. So that is an option for them. They have started to park every day sort of around this corner right here. Then it's a pickup and drop off zone right abutting the school, right? So that is one area. I think it would be, my preference is to allow parking on the school side of Jackson Road, because I think that there's just more opportunity to park there. And I actually think we get more complaints from residents who, complain that there's cars that are parked so close to their driveway, within 5 feet or within 2 feet or 1 foot of their driveway, that they have such a difficult time getting out. We get complaints that people are parking on the opposite side of their driveway too. But I feel like we get more complaints when they're so close to their driveway that they can't get out very easily. That would be the concern about only having parking on the residential side. A lot of teachers would start to park on the residential side. The other thing that I'm thinking about is, and this is going to probably happen once the new Lincoln Elliott moves to 150 Jackson, and then once this school is starting to be used as a swing space, right? If we have the Franklin School or something coming over here to use the swing space at Lincoln Elliott, where are all the buses going to go, right? We have the staff parking from the new Lincoln Elliott at 150 Jackson, the staff parking for this swing school, all the buses. So we definitely can't have parking on both sides of Jackson Road, even now, but even more so in the future when we might need to have a place for buses to be able to pick up and drop off. We can't close Pearl Street really like we did Nevada Street. We're not talking about closing a street. But it's just sort of, I think, setting the stage for solving an immediate problem and maybe setting the stage for in the future, where would the buses be parking? So I think that answers most of the questions that you were asking about.
Yes, I actually did not realize that the Gardner Street, the restrictions had been lifted. So that does give them another option. Okay.
Right.
So,
Thank you.
at some point, we should talk about the plan for when there will be two schools there, but that's not immediate, but it makes a lot of sense to me. Thank you, David.
Right, because no matter what, like the buses would be coming over here and then they would have to drop off and then sort of continue through here into Watertown to loop back over to Watertown Street. Captain Doucette.
So I know some of the faculty also parks on Capitol and Washburn as well as Gardner, and they already mentioned the streets. In regards to which side of the road we should use, I just think it makes more sense to keep the students and the parents on the school side than having kids run across the street up there with cars traveling both ways. It's just, it just makes more sense to keep the kids on the school side for the parking.
Right, I agree with that too. That would be option two. Other comments from the public or from city councilors? Or members of traffic council?
David, this is Isaac.
Yes.
Apologies for not asking you this earlier, but do we have a sense of available parking space on one side or the other? Because that might help, just as far as, like, say, for example, one side has,
Well,
more
the school
space.
side has a lot more spaces. You can see, that's what I was saying. There's no driveways on the school side. It's just all a long curb. We have the driveway, we have the parking lot,
Yeah,
and then after the parking lot is like, there's nothing preventing anyone from parking that whole stretch.
Okay.
On the residential side, the west side, there's a whole bunch of driveways. So definitely more cars could fit on the school side, on the east side.
okay.
And again, they're on the opposite side of the street from where cars might be parking too close to driveways on the residential side, right? But the only thing is, again, we would need to post signs, but we do have a grass median and, so that's not so unusual. We just don't have the utility poles. Mitch,
So, on this picture, there's a sidewalk on the school side, right? There's a
There is.
sidewalk?
There is.
There is, yeah. Okay. So the other question is,
you can sort of
Sure.
see it in this picture. There's a sidewalk,
Yeah.
but sometimes they have the utility poles right in the middle of the sidewalk. So it's
Yeah.
probably not ADA accessible, but
well,
it is a sidewalk.
I was just reacting to comment about, students crossing the street. I think it sounds like that's a good thing. The other question is the width of the road. You were saying gets towards Capitol, gets a little wider. Is it pretty consistent that 27, 28 all the way down to the end where it connects to Watertown?
Yeah, so it's a little wider from between Pearl Street and Capitol Street, 32 feet. And then it becomes narrower from Capitol Street all the way to Watertown, 27 or 28 feet.
I was just wondering, the comment by the counselor is people, somebody at 51 backing out, whether that may actually be a little bit, narrower and maybe, some striping. I'm not saying we should do it. I'm just saying if everything's consistent, that's fine. But if it's narrower, maybe there's some tailor making you do,
Okay, thank you. Other comments from the public or from anyone? Okay. So we did notify all the residents on the street. We did notify the school.
Did you get any feedback, David, especially
No,
from?
we did not receive any emails on this item.
Okay,
Councilor Downs.
We've got to do something about the telephone poles and the sidewalks. A parent with a stroller is going to have a heck of a time getting a kid to school if the telephone pole is in the middle of the sidewalk. I'd otherwise definitely go for the school side of the street for parking.
Yeah,
But how many of those do we have? How narrow are they?
I think
it's just the one pole that's really the problem, Andrea.
Is it?
It's really almost like there's basically no houses that would probably walk to school from there because you're basically in Watertown after a very short distance.
Yeah, no, I'm thinking if someone parks on that side of the street
yeah.
and walks back to the school, that's your danger. Although I guess this is almost in Watertown and is temporary until the new Lincoln Elliott School is built. Is that correct?
Yes. Well,
Yeah,
Right.
so it's
But then it would be a
it's
swing space.
right. Then those spaces
might
might
wanna
actually
not
free
even-
up.
Right, and at that point, we probably wouldn't want to even encourage people to drive to a swing space school from across the city. We would probably want to encourage them to ride the bus like we did
Absolutely.
the car school.
Yeah. All right. I think I would move the option that has the parking on the school side. I
Okay,
forget
so
if you called that east or west or north or
so
south.
that's
but
option two.
option
would-
two.
Yeah, this is the thing. It would prohibit parking on the west side on school days. So that's the residential side. So we have a motion made by Counselor Downs to, this would be TC 865. This is option 2, as shown on slide 21. Is that clear for everyone?
Mm.
Okay, Mitch, did you have a comment before we
Yeah,
call the
I
roll?
was just saying, maybe Isaac in the field could look at that telephone pole and figure out if there's, some adjustment, if people actually have to go on the street. I mean, I'm not, again, saying we should do it, but you had a picture actually showing that pole, very close, which
Yeah.
seemed to me,
Oh.
right there.
Yeah.
Is that the
I,
one?
I
Yeah.
walk there all the time, Mitch.
Yes.
It is narrow, only one person can really get by at a time. It would be difficult for anyone with a stroller. And it's been like that for many, 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 many years. And we will be moving to a new school.
Yeah.
It would be great to have that pole relocated.
But I guess what I was thinking, and again, I'm a planner, so I get way out thoughts, but, to stripe it a little bit, maybe extend the sidewalk, the curb with a little blacktop so that you'd actually have that ability if you got to that point. I mean, it seems to me that if you had a stroller, you're not going to get through there unless you go in the snow or on the side there. But, maybe that's a once in, 50 days kind of problem.
Right.
Right, and it's not anything the traffic council can vote on. It would have to be done
Okay,
through, I'm
uh,
not sure how
I'm
exactly.
done.
Okay. Okay, so any last comments before we call the roll?
Just to be clear, David, that you're going to restrict the parking on the school side where the poles are, right?
We would be restricting parking on the residential side, the west side. The school side would be where all the unobstructed.
Oh, okay, that's, okay. Sorry, I meant to
Right.
say it the other way. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Right, so we would be removing the restrictions on these utility poles and allowing parking on the west side. I'm sorry, on the east side, the school side.
Okay,
What's currently restricted would be removed on the school side,
okay.
okay?
Yep.
Okay, Danielle, can you call the roll, please?
Captain Doucette,
Aye.
Mr. Fishman,
Aye.
Mr. Kosis,
Aye.
Mr. Prezant,
Aye.
Counselor Downs.
Aye.
Okay, that's approved 5-0, option 2.
Option 2. So we just approved this slide from page 21. We have our 20-day appeals period. So after April 12th, we would be able to install the new poles and signs and remove whatever signs are no longer applicable on the school side. Okay, thank you all for that.
David, just one last thing. I know there are 2 other Ward 1 items, TC, that's 823 and 923, but I'm going to drop off for another meeting, but I have no problems with either one of those.
Okay,
Okay,
good, thank you.
thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay, so we're going to move on to our next item, which is TC 623. Isaac Prezant, City Traffic Engineer, requesting a stop sign at the intersection of Lakewood Road at Lake Avenue. So here is the location, the end of Lakewood Road. Here's a view looking down toward the lake. This is Lakewood Road, Lake Avenue at this T intersection. So we often have requests that come to us to add stop signs at these kind of T intersections. And so we do tend to approve them. We believe that there is a slight safety benefit. You're supposed to be stopping when you come to a T intersection, looking and then proceeding, but it does clarify right of way. There's no particular warrants that need to be met. Stop signs are allowed. They're not required. And especially we tend to approve them if it's near an area with a lot of pedestrians walking or bicycling, and that is certainly the case in this area. So our recommendation is to approve the stop sign. And this would be the language that would allow us to do it. This would be TC 866. And I'm just gonna call on anyone from the public who'd like to make a comment on this item. Yes, I see someone, Greg I can't read the last name.
Greg Versme. Hi, I live on 12 Clark Street nearby, and we're walking around the lake all the time, and there's a lot of foot traffic there. And I think it would be a good idea to have this stop sign.
Thank you for that comment. Jeremy.
Just want to say I agree completely with Greg.
Thank you, Jeremy. Okay, any other comments? Okay, good. Then I'll make a motion to approve the language of TC 866 that would add the stop sign at Lakewood Road eastbound at Lake Avenue. Any last comments before we vote? Danielle, can you call the roll, please?
Captain Doucette,
Aye.
Mr. Fishman,
Aye.
Mr. Kosis,
Aye.
Mr. Prezant,
Aye.
Counselor Downs.
Aye.
Okay, that's approved 5-0.
Oh, good. Thank you. So our next item is TC 523. This is Isaac Prezant, City Traffic Engineer, requesting a stop sign on the traffic island at the northwest corner of the Clark Street and Rowena Road intersection, Clark Street southbound. So this is another request that came into us through our WebQA 311 system. It's a little bit more complicated than the previous item. This is the location. This is Center Street. We have Newton Center to the north. We have Newton Highlands to the south, and Clark Street. This is Clark Street coming in off of Route 9, and then it sort of veers in both directions. This is Clark Street, and this is Clark Street as well. And then we have Rowena Road coming in with a stop sign right here. So the request is to add a stop sign at this location so that we clarify the right of way. So that vehicles coming down Clark Street would stop, Rowena Road would stop. The right of way is this section of Clark Street to continue through, especially these folks coming right through here or right up Rowena Road, right? So right now you have people coming down this way, Clark Street, and this way on Clark Street. It's not clear who has the right of way. So here's a view. This is where the stop sign would be located. This is Clark Street. This is the other Clark Street coming down this way, and Rowena Road is to the left. So again, this is an intersection where we have no particular warrants. We don't have any crashes that have occurred here. We did have 2 requests that came in recently to put a stop sign here to sort of indicate who has the right of way. Of course, maybe these requests came in because we've had construction lately right in this area. So again, it was a request that came into staff. Not required to put a stop sign in, but we do believe that it would be a little bit safer. It would clarify the right of way. And so that is our recommendation, to add the stop sign as shown on this slide. And I think that is the presentation. Well, I see Greg Versme.
Yeah,
Yes.
Versme. Yeah, thank you. Greg is fine.
I'm not wearing my glasses right now.
No worries. So again, I live on 12 Clark Street, so I can see the intersection from where I am right now. My house is at the corner. We've been here for about 2 years, and so I think I appreciate that this issue is coming in front of the council tonight. And I do think, yes, adding a stop sign would be a good first step, but this is a big intersection. You have cars coming from Clark Street going to Route 9 and cars going from Center Street going to Route 9, and also on the other way around. Clark Street does this weird T shape. I don't really know why. But I know you mentioned that there hasn't been any traffic accidents, and I'm really happy about that. There's a lot of accidents on the other side of the road. However, that's probably because the area is very, very wide. So when cars come at a high speed, they don't bump into each other because there's a lot of space. However, the neighborhood is, luckily getting younger and younger. There are a lot of people walking with kids and strollers, and this is very, very difficult. For instance, for people coming from Rowena or Rotherwood, going into the lake, they cannot cross this intersection. There's no crosswalk, so it makes it very difficult. There's no sidewalk also around here. So a lot of people are walking, and a lot of people with strollers do have to go on the road there. So I would appreciate if putting a stop sign right now is okay, but going forward, I think studying potentially putting stop sign at every corner of this intersection, and think about adding sidewalks and crosswalks would be better before an accident happens. I also want to mention that there's a daycare really close by, and so wagon with young children are always going down the road there, so pretty dangerous.
Okay, thank you for that comment. Jeremy.
You can let Mr. Remus speak first.
Okay, that's fine. Mr. Remus.
Hi, I also, thanks for and the invitation. I also live at the intersection, and I'm not opposed to this stop sign. I would defer to Greg, who lives right at the intersection. I'm the house that you're sort of looking at right now in this picture across the street from there. And it is a tricky intersection. My concern with the stop sign, and I'm just throwing out another option, is that I don't think this is necessarily the most hazardous part about this intersection, which I agree completely needs to be improved somewhat. Although thankfully I have not, in all the time I've been here, seen any accidents here. There is some confusion, and I think a lot of the problem comes from people coming off of Center Street around that corner, sort of turning a right from Center onto Clark. Yep, right there. And so they come at a very high rate of speed. And so in that corner, there's limited visibility around that corner. So when people are coming down from the little section of Clark Street where you're proposing the stop sign, they've already, first, it is that T intersection like you described. So there's that implied stop there, and they've just come over a little speed hump. So they've already kind of slowed down to some degree. So there's a speed hump like right where your arrow is right now. And although there is also one over here, cars come so fast around that bend that it really doesn't slow them down much. And so I think if there was an effort to kind of paint some lines on the road to kind of make that sort of into a narrower turn so that they don't just come flying around, but most people just ignore the paint lines. And the only hesitation I have with the stop sign is I worry about just increasing like from brake noise and things like that. I'm not sure it's really going to add up more than if, for example, a yield sign might, if the intent is to make it clear that people coming from there need to yield the right of way to the other cars. I think any other traffic calming measures, like Greg mentioned, like sidewalks or clearer, sorry, not sidewalks, crosswalks across from Rowena to that triangle area, anything like that would be welcome. But I just, my only hesitation with the stop sign is that it would increase noise from cars braking and not really do much to improve the safety of which I think is primarily from cars flying off of Center onto Clark because they use it as a cut through to get to Parker.
Good, thank you for those comments. I just wanted to, maybe it's obvious that some of these other improvements that have been mentioned, like adding sidewalks or narrowing the streets, they're much bigger, more expensive solutions. And here at Traffic Council, we don't have a budget. We don't have a budget for any of that. We have a budget for stop signs, just small things. So this is what we could do at Traffic Council. There are other improvements would need to, go through a different process moving forward. So I just wanted to say that at this point.
Would a stop sign like here, sort of in front of 21 Clark Street, or would changing, like, does it have to be the case that cars have the right of way off of Center? Would giving cars the right of way from that Clark Street extension so that it forces cars coming here to stop or yield, or is that dangerous because they're not expected to do so soon? Like, what Yeah, like would it putting a stop sign there be, that's not feasible, is it?
Well, it's not something that was docketed. It's not something that we had talked about in advance. Maybe it's something that could be docketed in the future. If you do put in like multiple stop signs, then there are warrants that need to be met. And we would need to, collect the data. And I don't know if there's anything else that Isaac might want to add at this point. The request came in to put the stop sign in this direction, which we looked at and we thought that that would be a safety improvement right there, because the most important thing in my mind is to define who has the right of way, right? Who needs to stop and who has the right of way. So we know Rowena Roan does not have the right of way. We just don't know, does this section of Clark Street have the right of way or this section? So if you put in the stop sign, at least we would know who is supposed to stop. Isaac, is there anything more that you could add at this point, or do you think I mostly got where we are?
Yeah, you mostly got it. I'll just piggyback on some other points, right? So this, we believe this stop sign, at least from DPW's perspective, it's an incremental step towards a safer intersection. I think the general east-west directionality portion of Clark Street is the clear throughway. And yes, I totally agree on that other point about just how close it is to Center Street and just what kind of compliance we'd have with folks stopping there. Also, a position of a stop sign and stop bar would be a little bit odd to figure out because we have a speed bump already there. So I think there'd be a lot of challenges and questions to answer and not quite the home run solution there. So, again, I would say this isn't something that we feel very strongly on. If we had a lot of crash history, if we had really challenging sight lines, we would probably feel stronger. But again, it's, we typically like to see stop signs approved and added when there are implied stops. And this is one of those situations.
Right. Thank you, Isaac. Councilor Downs.
Thank you. I am just delighted to hear that there are lots of kids and strollers moving into this neighborhood. It's a great family neighborhood. And I will agree with the public commenters here. This is a really large intersection with lots of pavement. So put that on our list of places that when we come to reconstruct, we might want to look at adding sidewalks and narrowing down just how much blacktop we have there. I will support this item, and I support, Isaac, if we do start to see issues, we should definitely revisit, figure out if it needs to happen on the other leg of Clark Street. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Downs. Jeremy, would you like to speak now?
Yeah, thank you. So as a reminder to everyone, I live at 102 Clark Street. And just like everyone else, I want my neighborhood to be safe, just like actually I want every neighborhood to be safe as a member of traffic council. But I'll take a different approach and say that I don't think that the case has really been made for a stop sign. I mean, this is a very unique intersection. And I would say that it cannot be analyzed as two independent T intersections where Clark and Clark and Rowena. I think it's all one big thing. And, I met with Isaac in the field a couple weeks ago, and I don't want to put words in his mouth, but he pretty much agreed with me on that. So given that, if a stop sign is what's desired here, then I'll make the case that we actually need to consider the guidance for either two-way or multi-way stops in the manual. And that needs more data on volume, which we don't have tonight. And if you don't agree with that, I would point out two other things. One, just to quote the manual again, stop signs should be installed in a manner that minimizes the number of vehicles having to stop. At intersections where a full stop is not necessary at all times, consideration should be given to using less restrictive measures such as yield signs. So that's one thing. The second thing is, in the past, traffic council, when we come across these intersections with unique geometry, we say, okay, has unique geometry, needs more work, and we don't put in the stop sign. One example of that was Beaumont, Lakeview, and Com Ave a couple years ago. For me, the thinking behind that is when you put a stop sign in a funny place, people aren't going to stop at it anyway. They're not going to understand what it means. They don't want to stop there, whatever. And in this case, when you come out of Clark Street southbound, right in the picture, you have your clear sight lines. You're good to go. So that seems like a problem there. What else? Actually, Isaac, you can respond. I have a couple more points, but I've probably talked long enough.
Thank you. Isaac, did you want to say anything at this point?
No, I would just agree generally, like it's an atypical intersection. I would push back a little bit as far as needing to look at it from a two-stop approach. I mean, really that guidance would most apply to an intersection that's more of a typical four-way. So I think it would be challenging to go through those warrants. I mean, we can do that. I can't say right now what would come out of that investigation. I think right now, the majority of drivers approach this intersection from this view of Clark Street, intending to come to some point of slowing down and observing and judgment. I don't think they're viewing this as a clear throughway for them, like the drivers on the east-west portion of Clark Street already are. So in that sense, I think a stop sign is consistent. Something that I've said before, and I'm gonna continue to agree with myself on is, yield signs. They're a great tool for channelized movements. If considering a yield sign at this intersection, frankly, I think would add to confusion. Ultimately, what you'd end up with in that scenario, you'd have one intersection that has two free-flowing approaches, one stop controlled approach, and one yield controlled approach. I just find that to be confusing. I find that to be really odd and atypical. I don't think that would be helpful.
Thank you, Isaac.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Isaac. Again, I really don't see this as two T intersections. I mean, it's a big expanse of pavement where four roads meet. That's not two T intersections, no matter how you look at it.
I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say that.
So I think we could use a little more data. I mean, I do understand where you're coming from with the stop sign. I just think that, it's awkward and potentially make things worse. I'd rather just work on the real solution. And I mean, this intersection actually operates surprisingly smoothly. I know it can be a little scary for pedestrians, but I think it'll be just as scary for pedestrians after we install the stop sign. And if anything, that just creates a false sense of security. So again, I just rather see the real solution get done someday. I know that costs a lot of money, but I mean, I just don't see it. I mean, I'm kind of a young guy, but I have other eyewitnesses who say that, for decades, this has operated perfectly smoothly, and, people just, it all works out. So again, it's not the end of the world, but that's just my 2 cents.
Yeah. And that's why I sort of wanted to set the stage as far as it not being a very strong recommendations from DPW. The couple of complaints came in. It is interesting that they came in around the time of the Feeney Brothers utility work, and just so the narrowing of this street and maneuvering challenges around construction. So, and again, no crash history going back as far as the records go for about 20 years that we can get through MassDOT data. So, I'm with you in that sense as far as, if there's a side of the argument that it's a drastic approach, I can understand that.
Yeah, thanks. And by the way, I'm very happy that my neighbors are here and speaking, their opinions, because I do appreciate that, because we do a lot of items where no one shows up. So this is great that we're having a real discussion.
Yeah, absolutely. And, if I'm observing drivers there right now, like sort of, this is what also, in my opinion, strengthens the argument of the stop sign a bit. there are already drivers that are slowing down coming from that approach. I think most drivers are realizing that they don't have the clear right of way. If they stop, if they come to a stop, they're not doing the wrong thing at all. I think in that sense, it is a bit of an implied stop. But again, the other side of that argument is there aren't many issues there currently from how people are operating.
All right, so thank you. I'll just say that I agree with Isaac and with Counselor Downs. It is not a strong recommendation coming from DPW, but I do think that it is safer with the stop sign, a little bit safer than without the stop sign. And all that's being docketed and discussed right now is whether or not to put a stop sign in. It does clarify the right of way. Again, we do have an appeals process if we do vote to move forward with the stop sign. If there are residents who strongly disagree and do not want to have the stop sign put there, we do have the appeals process within the next 20 days. So that the item could be considered by the Public Safety and Transportation Committee, and the full City Council would vote on it. Mr. Versme? And you're muted, sir.
Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, so just one slight comment, which is we can again. I'm not very much in agreement with the people who said, "Oh, nobody has complained over the past decades." Again, because the neighborhood is changing, and new people are coming, it becomes a different demographic, and so different type of problem that needs to be anticipated. My question was, how can we help push, or what can we do as member of the public and member of the neighborhood or who can we contact to have a bigger assessment and maybe more budgets to improve this intersection? And you can answer me offline. I don't know who can answer me.
Yeah, I can answer you. Apologies. I'm going to repeat a little bit of, I think it was actually you that I responded to through our 311 system. So when it comes to a larger effort, we do have a few different avenues. What I did do was just add this intersection to our ongoing list of potential projects for unsignalized intersections. We are an old city with, unfortunately, a lot of unique and funky intersections. So that list is pretty long, and we try to look at it from a data-driven approach. We know there's such fierce competition for funding, and we just want to use it as best as possible. So it's in that ongoing evaluation. We're looking to build on that evaluation. When it comes to sidewalks, the city has engaged a consultant to do a very large sidewalk inventory. It's through a QA/QC process right now, so hopefully it's coming to a point where it can be publicized. I know it's got tens and thousands of data points in there, so it's a big investigation. So some of these larger steps are happening. I just don't have any comment as far as like where this intersection is on that list or on those various lists.
So Isaac, are you talking about the list of our most recent traffic calming?
No, I'm not.
So not even that one. You're talking, okay.
No, traffic calming's for a study of roadway segments.
Right. So this is more intersection improvements.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Isaac. Mr. Remis.
Thank you. So you alluded to the fact that if there are other changes you might wish to make to this area, but you're limited by both money and the need to study this further and what your purview is on the traffic council. But I'm curious if like street paint would be in your domain, because I think really the biggest problem with this intersection is for pedestrian safety. And there's lots of walkers and people walking their dog, and there's no good way to get to that traffic, that sort of island in there from Rowena or my side of Clark. And the crosswalk to Cross Center is from the island. And if you go up to Center Street to try to cross at their crosswalk, it's a little bit hazardous because the sight lines, when people are turning onto Clark, they don't have, they can't really see you very well for too far away. So usually, like when I'm trying to get to that crosswalk to cross Center, I'll cross sort of well before that crosswalk at Center Street. So if like street paint is something that you could do, putting a crosswalk to make it clear that pedestrians are able to, you know, cross in that at that intersection where you're proposing the stop sign, I think that would be very helpful.
Yep. Yeah, we've gotten that question before. Thank you for bringing it up. Unfortunately, we're prohibited from adding crosswalks where there aren't accessible ramps. So that it falls under ADA laws. So it sort of gets us back to the prior conversation about sidewalks, which a portion of sidewalks is ramps, and how it all gets prioritized and where are they missing and how do we go about constructing it and what's feasible. So it's, yeah, I totally hear you. If it was that easy, I would agree.
It is an intersection that comes up regularly in our office. We talk about it, you know, regularly. And I suppose we will continue doing that until we could figure out the best
Yeah.
way forward.
David, I think you're talking about Center, Cushing, and Clark. Yeah, that intersection's been
Oh yeah, maybe that's the one, the next one down. Yeah.
Yeah, that's always been a hot topic of conversation. As the gentleman mentioned, there were some pavement markings done. Again, it was low cost things to try to help. We had the RFB added there within the last 6 months. That intersection is also on the same evaluation of intersections. So definitely on our radar.
Thank you, guys. Mitch.
Yeah, just briefly, I think this is like a first step. People get used to the stop sign. And then I think Mr. Ramos's comment about the stop sign on the Clark portion, just the more I look at it, the more I think that's probably the answer for people crossing, cars slowing down when they come off of Center Street. Maybe there's some other work, but I guess I would encourage in maybe 2 or 3 months for some petition to come in and to start looking at that. But this one would be a first step to get people used to actually stopping at that intersection, which I think would be a good thing.
All right, thank you. Jeremy.
Yeah, I mean, as it is now, my opinion is this stop sign violates the manual, and that also means it violates to the ordinance. So I'm against it. I recommend either to hold for further study and maybe some paint can make it compliant with the manual, or NAN. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeremy. Any other comments? Okay. Would anyone like to make a motion? We have the language in front of us to be able to vote.
I will move to approve.
Okay, so we have a motion made by Counselor Downs to, this would be TC 867, to approve the stop sign as shown on slide 33, Clark Street southbound on the traffic island at the northwest corner of Clark Street and Rowena Road intersection. Any last comments? And I would remind anyone who is opposed to this vote that there is an appeals process for the next 20 days. We have not had any appeals so far this year. I don't think we had any appeals at all last year. But that is an option. Danielle, can you call the roll, please?
Captain Doucette,
Aye.
Mr. Fishman,
Aye.
Mr. Kosis,
Aye.
Mr. Prezant,
Aye.
and Counselor Downs.
Aye.
That's approved 5-0, TPR 867.
Thank you all. Okay, and we're going to move on to the next item. So the next item is TC 5722. This is David Kosis, Traffic Council Chair, requesting changes to the parking regulations in the area of Watertown Street near 867 Watertown Street and possibly abutting blocks to prepare for the move of the Newton Early Childhood Program to 687 Watertown Street. Okay, so this item we heard back in November. This was in preparation for NECP moving to this new location. we docketed this item for Watertown Street. It's just this one block of Watertown Street where we wanted to change the parking regulations to provide short-term parking for pickup and drop-off at the NECP site. So, and we're continuing with the trial for Albemarle Road. So right now we're just talking about these two pink lines on Watertown Street, the 15-minute limit that we put in place with a trial on the north side and the 1 hour during NECP hours on the south side. Which it's really school days. So it's a 15-minute limit school days on the north side, 1 hour limit school days on the south side. We held it so that we could post the signs, which have now been posted. We also put in the no U-turn sign that was at the last meeting, the last traffic council meeting. So we see the 15-minute signs posted on the north side, the westbound side, and the 1 hour signs posted on the south side, which is the eastbound side. We've been monitoring it. I think that it's as good as we could do for pickup and drop off in this tight area right here. And so our recommendation is to make the trial permanent, to update the traffic and parking regulations by removing part of the existing regulation and adding in the new regulations, which would include the 15-minute time limit, 8 to 4 on school days on the north side, and the 1 hour limit on school days on the south side. So that is the presentation for this item. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to speak on this item? I don't see anyone raising their hand. Okay, so I will go ahead and make the motion to approve the language shown on slides 39 and 40. This would be TC 868 to make the trial permanent. Any last comments? Danielle, can you call the roll, please?
Captain Doucette,
Aye.
Mr. Fishman,
Aye.
Mr. Kosis,
Aye.
Mr. Prezant,
Aye.
Counselor Downs.
Aye.
Okay, that's approved 5-0.
Very good, thank you. Next, we have TC 723. This is Traffic Bureau Captain Damian Doucette, DPW Commissioner James McGonigal, and Planning Director Barney Heath, requesting temporary and permanent changes in terms of the location and duration of public parking spaces, location of traffic signals, and changes to the circulation within and proximate to Commonwealth Avenue in Auburndale to include abutting blocks of intersecting streets in order to facilitate the reconstruction of Commonwealth Avenue and the Commonwealth Avenue carriageway between Hagan Street and the Weston Line. So we don't have really a presentation for this item. What we really want to do, since this large project has been funded and is going to be underway, that's going to change the parking regulations and the stop signs, potentially the traffic signals, different changes to our traffic and parking regulations. We wanted to put this on the agenda, as we have done for other large construction projects, so that we could vote to allow all these changes as a trial, to allow for the enforcement during the construction period. And then in the future, when the construction is completed, this item would be NAN, and we would be docketing all the permanent changes that would be that we would need to make to our traffic and parking regulations. Okay, so really all this is to hold this item to allow for all these changes over the next couple of years. Okay, any questions?
I'll do a motion to hold.
Okay, so we have a motion to hold. Danielle, can you call the roll?
Captain Doucette,
Aye.
Mr. Fishman,
Aye.
Mr. Kosis,
Aye.
Mr. Prezant,
Aye.
and Counselor Downs.
Aye.
Okay, that's held 5-0.
Thank you. TC 823. David Kosis, Traffic Council Chair, on behalf of Mark Development, requesting discussion and possible action to change the parking regulations on a small section of Craft Street between Washington Street and Ashmont Avenue. This item is docketed in accordance with condition 16 of the special permit issued for item number 260-22, which allows the petitioner to apply to Traffic Council to construct and designate a pickup and drop-off area along the Craft Street frontage of their approved plans. So for this item, we're talking about this small section of Craft Street. Here's Washington Street, here, Craft Street coming up, the DPW yard. Here's where all the school buses are temporarily parked. This is where the new building is going to be constructed. Here's a site plan that was approved. And you notice in the approved site plan that Craft Street gets bumped out a little bit right here. And so to be able to create a loading zone, a small loading zone right here in the area of Craft Street, which currently parking is prohibited. So we worked with the developer to figure out the exact dimensions of what we would be changing in our traffic and parking regulations. We would be changing the specific language. It's for Craft Street 1L, which says that parking is prohibited on the west side of Craft Street from Washington Street to opposite Ashmont Avenue. That would be changed slightly, removing that line and adding in this new language where parking continues to be restricted along all of that section of Craft Street, with the only exception being this loading zone that was part of the approved site plan. So that's the presentation for this item. I know we have some people there on the call today. I'm not sure if there's anything more to add. But if anyone wishes to comment before we vote, if you could raise your hand and we can call on you. And I don't see anyone so far. Okay. So I think it's pretty clear. I'll go ahead and make the motion to approve this language on slide 47 of this presentation. This would be TC 869. Any last comments? Danielle, can you call the roll, please?
Captain Doucette,
Aye.
Mr. Fishman,
Aye.
Mr. Kosis,
Aye.
Mr. Prezant,
Aye.
and Counselor Downs.
Aye.
That's approved 5-0.
Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you all. So now moving on to the next item. This is TC 923. This is Isaac Prezant, City Transportation Engineer, requesting to establish a 20-mile-per-hour safety zone on Craft Street between Watertown Street and 500 feet west of the Albemarle southbound roadway segment. This was one of the things that was docketed in response to recent crashes and to try to improve safety in this area. I'm going to go through this presentation. This is some background on safety zones, which were recently approved by Mass General Law. We now allow the communities, including Newton, all the communities in Massachusetts now can establish, I need to just move this out. Okay, we could establish safety zones which set the speed at 20 miles per hour. This is the only regulatory speed limit that we as a city would be able to adopt. All other speed limits, all other regulatory speed limits would need to be approved by MassDOT. So we can't use safety zones in place of school zones, and their specific locations where the safety zones should be that we should look toward, we should look at the land uses, including areas where we have parks and playgrounds, senior center, hospitals, other medical facilities, high schools, daycare facilities. It's really not intended for all streets throughout a city. It's intended to be used in specific areas with vulnerable road users. So also importantly, the safety zone has certain dimensions. It should be at least a quarter mile in length, and shouldn't be 500 feet beyond where that particular land use ends. So we've been approving a lot of safety zones in Newton. pretty much one or two every traffic council meeting over the past year. Now we have all of these locations in Newton where we've approved safety zones and put up the signage. So this is great. And here is what our recommendation is for the next safety zone for Craft Street. This would be the location. It would start and end 500 feet west of Albemarle, the southbound Albemarle roadway. That is part of the guidance from MassDOT. Also, the other end the safety zone would start and end at Watertown Street. So the way that we were able to get such a long safety zone for Craft Street is we looked at the land uses along that stretch. So just going back real quickly, we should be looking to approve safety zones where you have parks and playgrounds or high schools. Those are the two bullets that are relevant right here. In this case, we have the Albemarle Field and Avery Woods right here. So from that point, 500 feet westerly, we could have the safety zone. Then luckily, we happen to have Linwood Park right here in the middle, which allows us to continue the safety zone through here. And then we actually have a high school in the education center. So that was lucky for us. In this case, we were able to extend the safety zone all the way down here to Craft Street. And so that's what we're recommending. We think it would be a good safety improvement to reduce the speed limit and add the 20-mile-an-hour signs. That's our recommendation to approve this request. And now we can have some public comment. I see Jesse Corey.
Hello, my name is Jesse Corey, and I live at 64 Oak Cliff Road. I know that the speed limit on this part of Craft Street right now is 30 miles an hour. And so this is something that will definitely need to take getting used to. And so when the safety zone is implemented, I would suggest putting up electronic message boards reminding people of the new speed limit. And also something that I like to point out is that a couple of main roads intersect with this portion of Craft Street, and I would like to make sure that people who are turning from these main roads, for example, North Street, California Street, and Walnut Street onto Craft Street, know that the speed limit is much lower than they would expect, because usually people would expect a speed limit of around the 30s. And so I would like extra signage posted in this safety zone to make drivers aware that there's a safety zone in case they don't know when they turn from those side streets onto Craft Street.
So thank you. I think those are good comments. I think you're right that the motorists might not expect to have a 20-mile-an-hour speed limit along this stretch. So I think it is a good idea that we put in some message boards at the beginning. And I mean, the signs themselves are quite big and prominent. So that hopefully will grab people's attention as well. So thank you, Jesse. Kathy Loffer.
Thank you. I live at 26 Mossman Street. I sent the council an email earlier this week, hearing no responses. I guess I just want clarification that this is only going west on Craft Street. What about those folks that speed going east on Craft Street?
This is for eastbound and westbound.
Okay, that wasn't clear to me. Thank you.
Yes. So when you're traveling eastbound, when you get to this point, can you see this cursor where the
Yep.
safety zone would
I know
begin?
this very well.
That's where we would have the sign that says 20-mile-an-hour safety zone. This big sign right there, safety zone, speed limit 20. So
right
would
between Richard
that
Circle.
sign
Yep.
as close to this point as possible, right?
Okay.
And so this whole thing would be a safety zone. And then when you're coming northbound, at Watertown Street would be another safety zone sign. We probably would have another one in between because it's a pretty long safety zone. So we probably would have two safety zone signs along this stretch in each direction. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I see Dan Evans. And we just need to know your address for the record.
Sure, 24 Maynard Street. And, I love the idea of this, and I think it's great, and I think it should happen. I also think it should be made clear that while this may be put in place, there needs to be enforcement. I walk both of North Street and Crafts and Albemarle daily, and there is zero enforcement. And so it would be great to see our Newton teams work together to look at these intersections and look at these changes and say, hey, we need to look at the drivers here that are speeding, and we need to take a closer look at how we enforce these changes. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that request for enforcement, especially when the new signs are posted. Bill Blanchfield.
Hi, thanks very much. I wanted to ask if the Fessenden School frontage was taken into consideration when you set the end point and start point for the safety zone on the westbound side.
I can jump in there. So it has not been as part of this recommendation. I think as a private school, yet a school of higher education, I think it's something that can be considered. It's something that we were going back and forth on. So definitely happy to discuss that more with this group. I know Councillor Downs has some opinions on that as well. So just to quickly highlight, just some considerations. What we want to do is try to find a location of the start of the safety zone that has the greatest impact on Crafts and Albemarle. We know we have a host of concerns at this intersection, and one side of the argument can be to pick that as the endpoint and have a sign as close as possible, really at that around that 500-foot distance to the intersection, really capture drivers' attentions as they're getting closer to the intersection. So I think we can make a consideration to extend it further using Fessenden Lane essentially as that endpoint, but that might get the signage away just a little bit farther. So it's just something to consider, not against it from my opinion.
Thank you, Isaac, for the explanation. I see, I'm not wearing my glasses, but I think it says Ali Frank.
I'm Allie Frankie. I live at 21 Mossman Street. And just speaking to the start of this 20-mile-per-hour zone, I'm thinking, I know that Fessenden has some, 2 playgrounds. And I just want to make sure that those are considered fully, because I know that it's not just like a secondary school, but there are playgrounds for young children. Also, it's really the downhill of Craft Street that's generating the most speed. And that's what I find is most troubling in terms of the crosswalk.
Thank you for that comment. Councillor Downs.
Thank you. So I think I've spent most of the beginning of this week talking about this intersection and the safety zone. I am delighted that we're looking at this, and I hope we pass it. However, I think we can include the Fessenden Field and measure your 500 feet from Fessenden Drive, which is just under your little white and purple lettering, Mysticoses. That gets the speed limit sign just about where the hill is starting. And so I think might be most effective there. So I would advocate for extending it by that additional, probably 300 feet, because we're almost at the end of the Fessenden Field with this 500 feet from the intersection. But I will vote for this as is and ask that we look, if we don't amend it, if we can't amend it here, that we look to extend it by another 500 or so feet to the west. And again, that's just so that we catch people. There's actually a sign there that says no parking here to corner that we could hit, and that would get you through that, through there with very little trouble.
So, thank you. I think that the fastest thing, if we want to get the 20-mile-an-hour signs up as soon as possible, if we generally agree that at least this section should have a safety zone, would be to approve this language here. Then, wait our 20-day appeals period and then be able to post the signs. Otherwise, if we want to change it or extend it in some way, we would probably need to hold this item, then
David.
take a look at it. I was just going to say, take a look at it. Even if it's possible, if it's within the guidance to extend it, put it on a future traffic council meeting. It might be better to move forward now and then see if we could tweak it further, with another item. Isaac, did you want to correct me?
I wouldn't say correct you. I would just say I think we can amend it and the language wouldn't be too difficult. I generally agree if we're picking a distance point, when it comes to like 300, 400, 452, some pretty random number, it can be pretty difficult. In this case, I think we could amend it fairly easily from a language standpoint and just use Fessenden Lane, west of Fessenden Lane, as opposed to Albemarle southbound roadway. So I would just say it's not really an issue from a language standpoint.
Okay, so it's not something that I looked at in advance. I did not, do we, maybe I just asked, like right here, these are houses or these are fields abutting Craft Street, Isaac?
Right. So basically what we would do is we would incorporate the Fessenden Parks into that vulnerable user land uses. And so then we would take that roadway, Fessenden Lane, as the edge of that applicable use and go
This
500
is Fessenden Lane right here?
Yep. Yeah.
So it's already probably 250 feet, just eyeballing it to the west of Fessenden Lane.
Right,
Yeah.
so you're only extending it about 250 feet, but it
And we're-
takes you to that first corner and you've got a signpost right there. And the hill starts just after that, which is, given the input from the neighborhood, which is seeing the speeding daily, and, going out and looking at it, that just looks like the most logical thing to do and would address the main problem, which is that people are coming down, particularly eastbound there, really fast, and that's why it's so difficult to cross at Albemarle.
So Isaac, can you just quickly look at Google Maps and
Yeah.
can you just
You got it.
just
No, you
double
got
check that this is open space right here? It's not like this, you can walk right in off of Craft Street into a park right here.
David, I can answer that. There's trees lining it, but you can basically walk through the trees. They have a fence, or I should say a netting up to keep soccer balls and lacrosse balls from ending up onto the street of Craft Street, but you can, in essence, walk right in.
So we would consider that to be a park and playground access from
Right.
Fessenden Lane.
That and an education center.
Oh, well, I guess, yeah. Right, well, this whole, like the education center is way down here, right?
Right. So it's right. It's, I guess, is the property of the education center.
But I guess we're going with the fact that we are saying that this is a park right here, this area right here.
Yeah, it's a playground.
I'd point out that there's also a early education center in the ice rink building.
Right, so, but we're talking about right here is a park. That's the bottom line. That's
Yep.
how it meets the requirements. Is that right?
Right.
Okay, so Isaac, do we feel comfortable changing this right now?
I do.
From Watertown Street to a point 500 feet west of,
Pheasant Lane.
like that?
Yep.
Okay, so right now, this is what we have. And I see Jeremy, you have your hand up.
Yeah, so I just wanted to, well, first, just on the safety zone criteria, you know, I'm always a stickler for those types of things, and I do agree. It's a park / playground. I guess I would probably say you should probably say the eastern edge of Pheasant Lane versus the center line or the western edge, but that's a minor point. But also just, I mean, I've said it before, safety zones should begin at the top of hills, not the bottom. So I agree with that too.
Good, thank you. Mike Halley.
I just agree with that. I think the positioning is good for where this starts. You don't want people reacting as, you know, going down in it. I mean, getting people to follow speed limits is hard enough. I think this is pretty reasonable because you come out of Waltham and Crafts. You know, it'd be nice at some point to think about the Scandinavian Living Center, but if people are sort of out of that zone, it's now straight, they see the sign, I think it's our best chance for reasonable enforcement. It is important to get those speeds down. That'll fix this intersection if we can do that in multiple ways. So thank you for making this edit. And you know, I think it's minor from a editing point of view, but I think it you know, really would impact the effectiveness of this. Thank you.
Thank you. And did I spell Fessenden correctly? Does everybody agree?
You did.
Yes. Okay, good. Jesse.
I was gonna say that instead of saying Watertown Street to a point 500 feet west of Fessenden Lane, it just makes sense to say Watertown Street to Richards Circle.
Except we like to have the 500 feet to comply with the requirements of the guidance from MassDOT. I think it's fine to say it this way. Dan Evans.
Hate to beat a dead horse, but enforcement. These signs can be put up, but for people on the call that can do this, enforcement.
Okay, thank you for that reminder. Any other comments?
I would just add one. One of the objectives of the safety zones, and one of the things that happens as a result, even if people do 25 or 30, is that it feeds into the algorithms of the navigation apps. So for those looking for a quick cut through, that makes this slightly less attractive and may get it off of their radar, so to speak.
Thank you. Okay, any other comments? All right, good. So I think that I will make a motion to approve the language of TC 870 to add a safety zone on Craft Street from Watertown Street to a point 500 feet west of Fessenden Lane as shown on slide 52. Any last comments? All right, Danielle, can you call the roll, please?
Okay, Captain Doucette,
Aye.
Mr. Fishman,
Aye.
Mr. Kosis,
Aye.
Mr. Prezant,
Aye.
and Counselor Downs.
Aye.
Okay, that's approved.
Thank you, everyone.
5-0.
Thank you. Okay, so our next item, TC 1123. This is Jason Sobel, Director of Transportation Operations, requesting to create a no left turn restriction at the Albemarle Road southbound approach to Craft Street. And I know we've received many emails about this. I'm going to go through the presentation and then we could open it up for comment.
David, I'll want to jump in before we open it up too.
Okay, good. So this is the location that we are going to be talking about. This is Albemarle Road southbound at Craft Street. Yeah, so here's a view looking south. So the background is that the city applied for a MassDOT grant, a Safe Routes to School grant. Actually, we applied twice. We didn't receive it the first time. We did receive it the second go around. So that was very exciting for all of us. It was a big grant. It's almost $862,000 to add a traffic signal at Albemarle Road at Craft Street. We've long wanted to put a signal there. Also, would be including a pedestrian push button, a rapid flashing beacon at Albemarle Road and North Street. So the traffic signal would be on both approaches, on Albemarle Road, the southbound approach and the northbound approach. And that is funded. It is moving forward, but we need to wait a couple of years. It's in federal fiscal year 2025. So the summer of 2026. So that's in process. In the last couple of weeks or months, we've had a series of crashes at this intersection. There's been crashes, at least 4 of these crashes lately have been related to southbound vehicles. Okay. So we were looking to think of, we know that this big safety benefit is going to be coming our way in 2026, but there was, a lot of email traffic about what can we do in the short term to try to make the intersection safer while we're waiting, right? So we docketed the item to put the safety zone in on Craft Street. We looked at a road safety audit that was done recently by MassDOT, looking at potential improvements at this intersection. So when we were looking at the road safety audit, they noted that a potential safety enhancement would be adding a no left turn restriction from Albemarle southbound onto Craft Street. That was an idea that was in the road safety audit. The road safety audit recommended that we evaluate it and we discuss it in the appropriate forum, it said, which is Traffic Council. This is our forum to discuss this with the public. We envisioned that this would be a temporary change, a short-term and temporary change until the traffic signal would be going in 2026. So that's why it was docketed. And of course, we're looking for community input before any decision is made. This would be the optional change that we would be discussing tonight, to make the to add a no left turn from this approach onto Craft Street. We have several options. We could either take no action after we have the discussion, which means that nothing changes and then the item just goes away and we don't change anything in the field. We continue to allow that left-hand turn. We could hold it for a trial and see how it goes, or we could just approve the item and add the left turn prohibition. So we have received many emails from the public on this item. It was a late addition to the docket, which is why it's at the end of the agenda. We received a lot of opposition. Emails from 169 Albemarle opposing this restriction, 26 Mossman, 24 Maynard, a couple with no addresses listed, another email from a house on Maynard Street, no address was listed, from 165 Albemarle opposed, 49 Maynard opposed, 151 Albemarle opposed, 29 Mossman opposed, including additional addresses. More of them came in today. I think we received one email in support of the idea. So that is the public comment that we received so far. Many of the emails suggested that we do a different trial, a trial that would close, instead of not allowing the left turn, that would close a section of Albemarle so that you can't turn off of North Street. That partial closure of Albemarle is not on the agenda tonight. So it's not something that we could really discuss or talk about or vote on or anything like that. I think it would have its own negative aspects and safety concerns. But if there is a lot of interest among members of the neighborhood to consider that instead, then we would be looking to the neighbors to docket a new traffic council item. We would need 10 signatures on the traffic council petition form, 1 signature from 10 different houses in this neighborhood. And so if the neighbors strongly feel that that is an idea that they want to discuss further at traffic council, then once that traffic council petition form is filed, we would put it on an agenda and be able to discuss that idea in a future traffic council meeting. Yeah, so that is what I have for this item. And before we go to public comment, Isaac, did you have some further comments?
Yeah, I'll just add a couple of things. I actually didn't realize you had that level of detail in your background slide, which is great. Yeah, so folks, we got a lot of emails on this, and I just wanted to say on my end, we definitely appreciate them. I think Jeremy had a point earlier on another docket item. We have a lot of docket items every year, and we invite a lot of folks, and a lot of them we don't hear any feedback on at all. So that was great to get it. I was gonna laugh at myself a little bit here as far as how this got docketed. So as David pointed out, it was something that got docketed last second as far as agendas get set for traffic council meetings. I docketed it with Jason's name, Jason Sobel. He's my boss, because I felt like I have been docketing a lot of items recently. So I ended up sort of accidentally throwing him under the bus a little bit, if you will, just as far as who gets a lot of the comments directed at. So, but really what I wanted to say was, this isn't something that DPW is intending to impose on folks. Really, this is why we have these meetings to discuss it. So, the door is absolutely there for people to have different opinions and disagree with it. And again, I appreciate all the emails that have come in. The other thing that I wanted to just note on the background, there are various meetings happening and discussions happening. So, we do have a MassDOT grant to essentially the focus of it is bicycle infrastructure on Albemarle Road. A big piece of that plan is the Crafts Albemarle intersection. So we're working closely on DPW's end with the consultant that's finalizing that plan for implementation this year. We do have some further short-term improvements planned for the intersection. So we definitely, are optimistic about those in the near term for the spring. We're just putting some of the final touches on that. So that's another thing that's happening, and there will be public meetings coming up in April about that and the Albemarle plan overall. So just wanted to acknowledge that as well.
Okay, good. Thank you very much, Isaac. So, we're going to open it up for public comment. I think at this point, it seems pretty likely based on all the feedback we've gotten so far that we would not be moving forward with this. We would be voting to take no action unless there's some sort of major shift in opinion at this meeting, which I don't really anticipate. But I'm going to open it up for public comment. And so I see Mike Halley.
Hey there, thanks everyone. And first, I wanted to lead on this by saying thank you for the city for being so responsive. One of the reasons, Isaac and David said, was this got put on pretty quickly, so maybe last minute, because I think you were looking to address something that is a significant safety concern, but it was coming from the community. And, it was in the MassDOT report. So I think it was very reasonable. And I know separate from this, like David said, there's other discussions that are happening, other things that were raised that are, will really improve safety here. And so I think it was good to get it out and get discussion going. But I'll just summarize. It looks like, looking at the crash reports, the left turns don't seem in themselves responsible for many, if any, crashes over the last decade or so, according to the MassDOT report or the MassDOT crash study that I could see. And over the last couple years where we have Newton police reports, it doesn't look like that is really an issue. And similarly, once you think about it, it's just like, yeah, how do the people who are on southbound Albemarle turn left? I mean, the way it's configured with a one-way street, They've got to go straight through the intersection, which is in fact the thing that we know is most dangerous right now in the intersection. So we're actually forcing some of the people who live there to do the more dangerous thing that we're trying to mitigate. So, once you kind of look at that, it's just like, yeah, I guess why. It would be nice if, it would be really nice if that that exit were one lane. So, maybe that's something that we can talk about in the future. If you had, people couldn't kind of make it into kind of 2 lanes turning right, which is a very high movement, and going straight, getting rid of the left turn might fix that, but that's sort of a separate issue. So, in retrospect, when we look at the details, I think there's enough evidence to say this isn't going to fix things, and it's going to, potentially produce some significant problems, at least for a handful of people. So I would agree that we sort of move on and look at the next list of things to make this better. But this item isn't going to really help. So thank you.
Thank you, Mike. And talking about would be nice if we could get that signal put in this year, right? But we know that can't happen. But I am very thankful that it is coming.
Right.
But
But
we need to
but again, we should have that discussion about how much traffic we want on southbound Albemarle to begin with. But that'll be another discussion in many meetings. So thank you.
Right. Thank you. Mabel So. And you're muted. You need to unmute.
Yeah. My name is Mabel So. I live at 165 Albemarle Road. Every morning I walk over Craft Street for my morning walk, and I find that the problem is the Craft Street. That's the cars, they come pretty fast. Albemarle Road, I also walk by, and I found that the drivers over there, 99% of them, they are mostly behave. That's not the problem of them, but the speeding car from Waltham that make the accidents. And also when I live there, if you put a stop sign there, I have no way to go to the northbound of Albemarle. For example, you look at the map, if I cannot turn left, I cannot go to the North Street. I cannot go to the California Street. I even cannot go back to the Albemarle Road 121 to visit my friends. You shut me off totally, and I have to go and use all these streets all the time. Just as what you said already, I agree that you have a safety zone on Craft Street. When they slow down, I think the accident should be fine. And I hope that you hold off of this proposal. Otherwise, our community over here, we are all upset. Thank you.
Thank you for that comment. Jesse Corey.
Hello. I'm actually surprised that this item also doesn't prohibit going straight, or doesn't prohibit going straight across Craft Street. And I'm surprised that this doesn't propose right turn only, because going straight and turning left are both equally difficult. And coming southbound on Albemarle, looking to see what's coming from the right is difficult because there's a curve on Craft Street just near Fessenden Lane. And so the suggestion I have is to do right turn only, and also make Craft Street and Albemarle Road southbound segment 2 ways between Craft Street and North Street, but retain the do not enter restriction at the corner of Craft Street and Albemarle Road, so that the residents who are going to be impacted by this change will be able to get to North Street or California Street, like what Mabel said.
Thank you, Jesse.
Thank you.
Next, I see Dan Evans.
Thank you. I'd like to echo the same from Maribel and Jesse. I stood out there the other day and counted the number of cars that I could, and the 2 vehicles that made the left were both Maynard Mossman residents. So I don't see the point in actually, making this left turn illegal, but I will, again, for the people on this call that can make an effort, in encourage the enforcement of the rules that are happening in this area, including the 20 mph.
Very good, thank you. Next, we have Matt Mazer.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Matt Mazer, and I live at 24 Maynard. Full disclosure, Dan is my husband, but we're in different rooms. I don't really have anything new to add. I mean, we did submit the letter, but I did want to just echo and plus one what Mike Halley said, really just to have my voice heard, another vote for a nay on this particular item.
Very good, thank you very much for participating in the meeting. Jane Hanser. And Jane, you're muted.
Okay. I need to mute. Okay. 40 Cedar Street. So I'm one of those people who did not write a letter, although I started to write one and support it. And then I thought, maybe I don't support this. And I just was going back and forth and back and forth, and then didn't write a letter. So that solved that. I think with this 20-mile-per-hour safety zone, I think we should take another look at it and see how effective this is. And also really recommend to the police that they put one of those signs that measures your speed limit right in that 500-foot zone. So, because my experience with those signs is people, at least I do, I don't know if I'm typical, but when I see that sign that says what my speed limit, what I'm driving, I react very quickly and slow down because we're just not aware of it. So let's give that a try and then see. And if you want to revisit this again in the future, meanwhile, we'll be kind of inching our way toward 2025.
Right. Thank you, Jane. Anyone else like to speak on this? Melinda McGee?
Yes, hi. I'm at 16 Maynard Street. My wife is Melinda. We're actually sitting in the same room. We're 24-year residents on Maynard Street. I know it's always been a difficult intersection. I think one of the things that you mentioned, Dave, is that there's a lot of discussion around this intersection in a lot of different forums. And I think one of the things that we struggle with is, how do we kind of bring that together and allow the neighborhood to understand the gestalt of what's going on? We got a piece of paper, so we knew about this. But is, and fortunately, by the way, I'm in favor of being able to make that left-hand turn. It would be really horrific if we couldn't. We would really be trapped. A number of streets would be functionally trapped in there. But, maybe after this, if you can give us as a group, because obviously there's a lot here, how we can bring this together and participate without piecemealing it together, I guess is my question.
Yeah, I can answer that. So actually, that's a great reminder. So we do have a page on the Newton website for the Albemarle project. So in the coming days, there should be a shout out on there for an addition.
Isaac, is that on our webpage or is it on the planning department webpage?
Well, it's all on our Newton webpage. I think if you were to just Google Newton Albemarle bicycles project, something like that, you'll probably find it pretty quick. But yeah, we'll have another discussion just as far as outreach. Hopefully we have some flyers going out for that as well. But I know it'll definitely be on that webpage. I know that webpage is a good source of, past materials, sort of how we got here, and how we continue to move forward.
Right. Okay. Yeah, because there's just so many changes that are going to be happening on Albemarle Road with various projects and the Safe Routes to School project and the changes to the parking probably. So yeah, and so that's all covered. Hopefully most of that is on the webpage. Aaron Blanchfield, sorry.
Yep, you got it right. I'm Erin Blanchfield. We live at 9 Mossman Street. I just wanted to say thank you to the Traffic Council for listening to us. There's a lot of neighbors on this call, and we're pretty passionate about this intersection and appreciate that there's a light coming, but it's a long ways away. And so I want to say thank you for listening to us. And if the next step is for us to sign a petition to get more on the docket, if that's what we need to do, then if you could clarify that, if bringing it to you guys is the next proposal.
Well, what I was saying before is if there is interest in a different kind of trial, like I noticed a lot of the emails talked about closing a section of Albemarle between North Street and Maynard Street. I think that would cause other difficulties, right? In terms of vehicles that might want to take the right-hand turn from North Street onto Craft Street. Now it's an extreme angle for these vehicles that seems very dangerous, I think. Or even for residents to be able to get to Maynard Street or Albemarle from North Street. If it's closed, how would they, that would make, I just think that there's some difficulties with that idea as well. But if it is something that the neighbors are interested in talking about further, then that would be something that would be docketed. You can go on, either visit the clerk's office or go onto the city webpage, look for city council, look for traffic council, and then the traffic council petition form that could be filled out with, any specific thing that you would like us to look at. You would need 10 signatures. So one signature from from 10 nearby houses. And then it would go onto a docket. Everyone would be notified, just like for this meeting. So that's what I was trying to say.
Right, and just as a friendly reminder that the council votes for parking and traffic regulation changes. So, and we don't have a funding body. So, just, as long as the docket's pertaining to that, that's fully your ability there.
Right. All that we vote on are changes to our traffic and parking regulations. So stop signs, one-way streets, parking regulations. That's what traffic council does. Other big, changes would go through other processes through, if we're talking about traffic calming. I don't think that we're talking about traffic calming in this case. Right. So I guess I'm only talking about the traffic council kind of changes that we could make. Councilor Maliki, did you want to speak?
I think, was Mr. Evans ahead of me?
Oh, okay. Mr. Evans, did you want to go first?
Yeah, I just want to point out a couple of things, to echo Aaron. There are a lot of people on this call that live on Maynard and Mossman Street, as well as Albemarle. And any changes that are made to that intersection of Crafts and Albemarle there affect us. And one thing that I really want to point out is that, we received a letter that Maynard Street is going to be resurfaced in the 2023-2024 timeframe. And as Isaac has told us in the past, thank you, Isaac, for all of your emails. Maynard Street is extremely wide, and resurfacing that street will only promote people traveling faster, from what we understand. We are talking about, the residents of Maynard and Mossman Street, some other change. And, I just want to be clear on that, that any change to Crafts and Albemarle, will affect us as that sort of center area.
Right. Thank you very much. Councilor Maliki, did you want to speak now or?
Yeah. Oh, yes, that's fine. I want to thank all the neighbors for the writing and showing up at the meeting, and the traffic council for, I think, listening. It's really great to have the firsthand testimonials. I was just curious, at the recent meeting about the forget the formal name of it, the traffic study. We talked about the visibility issue coming out of Albemarle South because of the hedges. Is there any thought to do anything about that, or do you think it will not make a difference?
So I
Do you
know,
know about that, Isaac? I've heard about this issue, but I did not go to that meeting. I know what you're talking about, Councillor Maliki. Do you have any
Right.
comments, Isaac?
yeah, so there are hedges on that private property. Forgive me, I don't have the exact term for that type of planting. I know it was identified at the PSAT meeting. Thanks to Parks and Rec folks that know their
Is it arborvitae?
I think it was
Yeah.
arborvitae, yeah.
Yeah. So we're gonna put together, at least in DPW's part, a sightline triangle evaluation. That's just something that we can clearly define, what the desired intersection sight distance is based off of standard guidance. But when it comes to a change for something that's owned from a private property, that's a larger task, and we're getting some guidance from law on that. Some of the initial guidance that we've gotten is, it seems like it's something that would have to go to a counselor committee for final input on.
Right. Right. So I think that we're continuing to look into that, Councillor Maliki.
Okay, yeah, I always wonder in cases like that, if, I know it's thought to be bad to not have the clear view, but on
Yeah.
the other hand, if you have a clear view, it might encourage drivers to just sort of try to whip out faster because they think
Yeah.
they can see.
My observation and all the reading I've done is the language is a bit stronger on things like fences.
Mhm.
But yeah, more to come on that.
Great, okay, thanks.
Thank you. And now I see Christina Abel.
Hi, yes, I'm a neighbor at Emmons Street, and I just have one question around the signage at the Maynard is like, do not enter 3 to 5. Is there a way to like add signage or maybe start enforcing that behavior? Because that's often when the kids are out and cars zip down that road, and it's quite dangerous. And actually, I was sad to see it was going to be repaved because that actually slows people down, the current conditions of the road. And then one other question around like, can you repaint the crosswalk that does go from Crafts over to Albemarle? Because it's just not, you can't see it. It's like worn out a bit. There's 2 crosswalks there. They're not well painted. Is there any way to just like beef up some of the signage that there are crosswalks there without having the beacons in place yet?
Yep. Yeah, that was going to be part of our springtime actions.
Right. So it's some of the same people on Traffic Council that work on like our line painting contract and the repainting of the crosswalks and reviewing. You're not talking about changing the actual regulations themselves to get onto Maynard Street. You're just talking about another sign, or is the sign in bad shape
Maybe
that's
there's
there?
2 signs at that street. I mean, I grew up in this neighborhood, and I remember that being in place when Raytheon used to be over there, because all the Raytheon workers would get out and there would be lines of traffic down that Albemarle Road, and that sign was put in place to prevent the cut through, which I appreciate. That I think that's good. I just don't think I think people ignore it at this point because it's not enforced anywhere.
So thank you. And Captain Doucette, I think you've heard a couple different locations, even in this meeting, with requests for additional enforcement. So so we have those requests. Anyone else from the public wish to speak on this item? Okay. So Councillor Maliki already thanked all of you. I want to thank you all as well for coming to the meeting and for writing and for participating. And we heard you loud and clear. This was the whole goal, to get some feedback. And would anyone like to make a motion to NAM this item?
I would be happy to make that motion.
Okay. So we have a motion to NAM this item. It's immediately removed from the docket. It can't be appealed. And And so any last comments before we take a vote to NAN this item?
Just
Danielle,
thank you
can
to everyone for all the work.
Danielle, can you call the roll for NAN?
Sure. Captain Doucette,
Aye.
Mr. Fishman,
Aye.
Mr. Kosis,
Aye.
Mr. Prezant,
Aye.
and Counselor Downs.
Aye.
Okay, that's voted. No action necessary, 5-0.
Okay, good. So our last item of the evening is TC 6619. Isaac Prezant, City Transportation Engineer, requesting to prohibit parking at all times on the north side of Oak Street between Needham Street and Abbott Street in order to shift the double yellow center line and extend 2 approach lanes to Abbott Street, beginning at Needham Street. So this item was docketed a long time ago. There have been a lot of changes in this neighborhood with the reconstruction of Needham Street and the reconfiguring of the intersection at Christina Oak and Christina Oak and Needham Street, right? And so we've come to the decision that we should NAN this item, not move forward with any changes right now for that approach. It could be redocketed in the future if needed. And Isaac, did you have anything else you wanted to add about this, or
Just a classic example of me docketing too many things. Yeah, no, you hit it spot on. This docket was more of a reaction to some of the initial operations at the traffic signal. But yeah, just so much has changed between Northland and the Petty Square project that's coming this year. So just wanted to get it off the agenda, honestly.
Okay. So would you like to make a motion to NAN, Isaac?
Yep, I would.
Okay. Danielle, can you call the roll?
Captain Doucette,
Aye.
Mr. Fishman,
Aye.
Mr. Kosis,
Aye.
Mr. Prezant,
Aye.
and Counselor Downs.
Aye.
Okay, that's no action necessary, 5-0, and that concludes our business.
All right. So I think our next meeting will be on April 27th.
I don't have
Oh.
confirmation yet,
Oh, you
so
don't yet? Okay.
I don't.
Hopefully it'll be that day. We'll get confirmation and hopefully it'll still be virtual. We don't even know that yet, right? As far as I can tell.
I
But-
believe that is true.
Okay.
We'll be virtual to make you happy.
Yeah, I think it's been working well. Okay, very good. So thank you all for coming tonight and have a good night.
Thank you.
too.
Bye.